my name is Beck and welcome to a video where I discuss the TBR pile. So this is like the to be read pile. These are the books that are like the book pile of shame, the books that you haven't read and you've just accumulated. And I want to talk about my experience because I had 205 unread books and now I have 29. So I have made a significant dent in that pile and I did it through various methods, and I wanted to share what my progress was like so that maybe it will help someone else out and help them get through that insurmountable number that seems like it's impossible. So I'm not gonna lie, this process took me a couple of years, but it was a few years of dedication and I started in different ways. So the first way was that I realized that I was buying a lot of books, like a lot of books. And I mean like 20 a month, maybe less, maybe more. Sometimes it went into the 30s, sometimes it was under 10, and it really depended. But the point was I was doing a book haul every single month. And so when I realized that I was doing that, first of all, I was studying. So when I was writing my honours thesis, having a book package arrive was a really good thing because it was like instant gratification. And even though I had a book arrive almost every week, I couldn't actually pick it up for leisure because I was writing a thesis. So all of those eventually built up, and that's where I got to the number 205. So because I was doing so many book hauls, I realized that I needed to curb that somehow. And I didn't want to stop buying books, so I kind of put this method in that was like read 5 books, buy 1. And I reduced that to read 3 books, buy 1, depending on how fast I was reading things during the year. And even though that didn't entirely work, because you can see on my blog ages ago in book hauls that I tracked the number and I definitely went over. I absolutely went over. But it also made me really aware of what I was buying and what I was letting onto my shelves and what I was or wasn't reading. So that really gave me a good self-awareness so that I knew what I was doing and I wasn't just buying books willy-nilly because of the hype. That is another thing that I want to talk about, because when I first discovered Bookstagram and Book Twitter and BookTube, I would just go out and buy everything that everyone talked about, and I didn't really know my tastes. More so now I know my tastes and I know what I like, so I am more in tune with what I know that I want to buy and what I think I should borrow from a friend or completely miss altogether. So only really time and experience has helped me with that. It's harder to judge when you're first off the bat and you don't really know what you like yet. So my advice there would be hold your horses and try and limit the amount of books that you're buying to a specific number. That way you don't go over, you don't blow your budget, and you still get to haul books, but you don't have to go overboard every time. So that's really how I started, buying a lot of stuff and then realizing that I was buying a lot of stuff. And because I realized I was buying so much, I also realized that I was reading so much. So I was trying to buy stuff and accumulate it to keep up with how much I was reading, even though I didn't need to buy any more to read heaps because I already owned a lot. So what I mean is I was reading about 100 to 120 or 30 books a year at that point in my life. And because I didn't have any study anymore and I was just transitioning into working part-time, I had entire days off where I could just read. So I read a lot. And so because I was reading so much, I also knew that I was buying so much, and I didn't want to just buy new books and then ignore my TBR pile because it was getting pretty unwieldy, let's be honest. So I made up some rules for myself when it came to picking my to be read pile for each month. And I don't remember all of them, but the specific ones were read a backlist book, read a book off your TBR that you already own, and then read a new release. And that meant that I was reading older books as well as books that I already owned, and I was not ignoring new releases if I really wanted to read a new release. So I was kind of ticking all the boxes, and eventually I also added read an audiobook to that because that leads into the next thing that I want to talk about. And I got into reading audiobooks in like 2016, 2017, and they really revolutionized my reading. At first I didn't think that would be something I would enjoy because I tried a few and I just couldn't connect with it, but I really have to like the narrator for the particular book, which sounds like it would be something obvious that you realize when you want to listen to an audiobook, but it took me a little while to realize that. I have to like the narrator, I have to like the writing style, and I have to like the tone of the book as well. So all of those things have to work together in order for me to read an audiobook. And because I got into audiobooks, I found that I was reading audiobooks of books I already owned physically, just in case they were a little bit longer and a bit more unwieldy and I didn't want to pick them up, as well as picking up a bunch of YA books at the time, because I knew that I could physically read shorter books obviously faster than I could read like 5 to 1,000 pages books. So I picked up a lot of adult fantasy and a lot of fantasy on audiobook, and I don't regret that at all. It was amazing for my reading pile. And I remember in one year I pretty much smashed Brandon Sanderson's entire backlist. So it was really helpful, and I've gone on to listen to audiobooks as like a constant staple in my reading life. So that really helped me be aware of what I was reading. It helped me look into what audiobooks were available for the books I already owned and to narrow down by listening to samples on Audible, because I know Audible has sample samples before you commit to buying them of audiobooks so that you know what you're getting into and you know the flavor of what you're getting into before you actually commit. So I went through my TBR pile, I clocked all of it on Goodreads, and from that I narrowed down what books were on Audible that I liked, and I made a wish list on Audible. So I actually should have started with this, I suppose, but when I realized that my TBR was super unwieldy, I went onto Goodreads, and it took me a very long time, but I physically scanned all of the books that I owned into Goodreads, and I made a few shelves on there. So there's automatically the want to read shelf, and you can't really avoid adding a book to that. So I also added TBR owned and then TBR to buy. So I added all the books that I owned, obviously, to the TBR owned, and then if there was a new release coming out, I'd add it to want to read, which was automatic really, and then TBR to buy, so that I knew that I wanted it eventually, but it wouldn't muddy my numbers when it came to the books I already owned. So that was a separate list. So now that I'd become self-aware of buying a ton of books, self-aware of the fact that I had a huge TBR pile, and self-aware of the fact that I was starting to knuckle down and chronicle what I actually owned so that I could start reading it, I realized that I owned a lot of entire completed series. And so because of that reason, I started to look at the series I owned and to read the first book in each of those series to see if I liked them or not. And I also went through all of those numbers to see if I still had the same interest in the series that I started with. Because I bought all of these a while ago, because it was over the course of an entire year that I was writing my thesis, my reading tastes changed. So I had to go through and cull a lot of stuff as well. So not only did I chronicle everything, I also did a huge unhaul at the beginning as well. And I did a few unhauls along the way because after, half a year, after a year, I realized that if I was excited about particular books, I would definitely pick them up, but others kind of just tanked for me and I didn't want to bother with them anymore. So that meant that I was not interested. So I ended up getting rid of those as well. When it came to entire series, I'd do a little try a chapter tag or try a chapter process. So I'd grab a bunch of books that I wanted to read. I'd read, the first couple of pages or the first chapter of each one. And if I liked the writing style, I would keep it. If I didn't like the writing style or I didn't connect with the book or I just wasn't interested, like I mentioned, I got rid of it. And that meant that I could cull an entire series off my TBR. So that really helped me cut things down and it really helped me zone in on what I knew that I liked and what I knew I wanted to try. So after I did all of that, I realized that I needed to actually set some proper goals. And at this time I was still writing my blog posts pretty regularly. So my videos have taken place of my blog posts. So initially I was doing to be read blog posts and I set my priority reads for every year. So I did the same thing in video format and I did that for this year and last year, I believe. While I like that and it has kept me accountable because I've gone back and revisited those videos and I've made sure to write notes on my phone so that I had that list on me all the time and I was always aware of it, it started to kind of peter off a little bit and I'm not as motivated by it as I used to be. So I guess it has a shelf life of interest. So if you're not interested in doing it anymore, try and change it up so that you don't get bored and stagnate, because I changed mine up and I made them into a TBR jar instead. And these are the last 29 books that I have unread on my shelves. Obviously I've had a book haul recently, so I haven't added those yet because these are the older books on my TBR, but I've tried to change things up because I didn't want to get bored. And so that's what I'm doing with this TBR jar. But so far the processes that I've gone through have worked. And those have been because my TBR has been pretty unwieldy. Make a Goodreads list of everything that I've got, split it up by priority books that I have gone through and picked out because I'm interested in them, whether they're popular or whether they've just been on my to be read pile the longest, or if the priority list isn't working anymore or isn't sparking the same amount of joy that it used to, make the few that I have left into a TBR jar. So that's kind of what my process has been like, and it's been really successful. Obviously I have 29 books now, and while this video is going up after I've filmed my TBR for the reading rush, I don't know when my vlog will go live, so I'm planning on reading 8 books or so for that readathon, and so I anticipate that I'll be down to probably 20, hopefully under, by the time that that readathon has ended. So maybe I can smash out most of them by the end of this year, which would be brilliant. I would love to do that, but my goal was just to get under 30 this year, and I've already reached that. So anything now is just bonus. So because I've been so aware of my reading pile, because I have made sure to track my own reading habits and not also go on a book buying ban, because I found that if I went on a book buying ban, it just meant that at some point when I was in a bookstore, I would just break and buy a bunch of stuff at the same time. So that didn't really work going cold turkey because it's something that I enjoy, so I'm naturally going to do it anyway. So I kind of had to factor that in when I was putting down my own boundaries. So everything has really worked for me so far, and I think it's worked because I've made sure to be aware but also not limiting. So if that can help somebody else, then I hope this video works for you. But that is all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know how many books are on your TBR in the comments below. Name and shame yourself. We can get through this together. Thank you so much for watching again, and I will chat to you in the comments. Bye.